Hello, my name is Dion Eisen, and I'm currently a fourth grade teacher here at Savannah Lakes Elementary School in Rocheron, Texas. I am a grade level chair as well, so I do have the opportunity to supervise 5 teachers and approximately 140 students. Savannah Lakes is located in Rocheron, Texas, as I mentioned earlier, and it borders Pearland, Texas, and Fresno on the western side of the district. So we have a large district, Alvin ISD, and Rocheron is snuggled right there in between Pearland and Fresno. And Savannah Lakes is a school that is a Title I school, and we serve roughly 770 students, of which 46% of the students are male and 54% are female. The student ratio is about 13 to 1, so on average, we have about 13 students in each class to 1 teacher, and there are 58 teachers of a diverse population. There are approximately 439 economically disadvantaged students that makes up about 57% of the student population. The school has 93% minority enrollment with about, I would say about 42% African American and 40% Hispanic. My site supervisor is Mr. Garnett Foster, and he's been working very closely with me to prepare documentation and activities where I can complete for my practicum log as well as my field experience. I'm about to present this needs assessment to this panel of teachers that are made up of 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers, and I look forward to completing the video and getting some positive feedback from all the instructors who will be observing and viewing my video. So I thank you, and I look forward to talking to you soon. All right, thank you everyone for participating in this conversation about economically disadvantaged students. Once again, like I said before, I'm Dion Eisen. I'm a candidate for the principal certification at Lamar University in the 5398 course. And this is a video that we will have a conversation about economically disadvantaged students here at Savannah Lakes Elementary. And I would like to introduce my panel of professionals here, starting with Ms. Sanchez.
Hi, my name is Alicia Sanchez. I'm currently a 3rd grade math and science teacher. I've taught for 7 years, and I value working on Title I campuses because I like to really help students that are economically disadvantaged. I come from an environment that was very similar, so I find that my passion is working more so with students in that area.
Robert Stewart, ELA 4th grade. I've been working in Title I campuses for most of my career. I'm really passionate about designing lessons to meet the needs of all students, specifically economically disadvantaged.
Kim Karpowitz. I've been teaching for 16 years. I teach 1st grade. I come from a background of a low economic disadvantage, so I know how some of these kids feel and how to help them with their education to help them grow.
My name is Caleb Hilburn. This is my 10th year in the classroom. I teach 5th grade at Savannah Lakes, all 10 years at a Title I campus, and I'm passionate about removing non-academic barriers, and I think students who come from a low socioeconomic status, I think that they bring with them a non-academic barrier. So I think in the classroom it's our job to talk about and come up with solutions to remove those barriers.
Excellent. And it's so great that you say that, because that's exactly what our topic is going to be today, removing those barriers from those socioeconomic and those disadvantaged students' lives to where they can participate and get what they need out of education and have an equal or have equity in the educational setting and thrive in it. So before we get started, I would like to establish some norms. One of the norms is to keep comments constructive and professional. We want to maintain the focus of the topic of the meeting, which is economically disadvantaged students. We're not going to veer off and talk about behavior or school athletics or something like that. We're going to stick to the topic. So that we can come to a logical solution as to what barriers are and how we can kind of come to solutions and conclusions that we can probably present to administration that can help our students. And last but not least, be positive. We're not going to use any punitive dispositions, and we're going to be careful not to use any students' names. If you would like to use a student situation, we can create a fictional name or call them a cartoon character or something, but let's be careful not to identify anybody specific. Are there any questions about the norms, guys? Once again, thank you all for participating, and let's talk about it. I mean, at the beginning of the week, I heard you, Ms. Korpowicz, and Mr. Stewart, you guys were talking about meals and how healthy meals are important in the lives of our students and access to healthy meals. And I said, you know what, this could be a good part or a beneficial part to the conversation. So speaking about economically disadvantaged, kind of talk about what that conversation was and how that kind of relates to how students can get through a day, whether they're eating or not, or whatever the case is in their home life, and how that connects to school.
So I think my viewpoint on this entire conversation, I think I started in the early 2000s, and the conversation and the lingo was mostly talking about how kids need to overcome their disadvantages. They need to show grit and
Yes.
things like that. Well, I went to a training and I read a book by Paul Gorski, and he was talking about removing those barriers so kids won't have to overcome those things. So making sure we have social services as far as food, mental health care, things like that in the school community.
Right.
So the kids don't have to show up to school hungry and show grit to overcome that on the start. No, let's just feed the kids.
Right.
You know what I mean? Let's just
Exactly.
feed them,
Exactly.
you know? So I think my approach to economically disadvantaged situations is holistic and making sure that they don't have to, privileged kids don't have to show grit, or they don't have to overcome challenges. And I think that should be the same thing for all schools, economically disadvantaged, Title I or not. So I'm always coming from a viewpoint of providing services for those kiddos to help them, just become the best people they can be.
Excellent.
It kind of gives them an even playing field.
Exactly. I think we all remember that it was, like I said, early, maybe even 2010s. They had a picture of two children looking over a fence,
Yeah.
trying to look over a fence.
Right.
So one had a higher podium than the other. Well, Paul Gorski, this guy was saying, just remove the fence. How about we just remove the fence?
Right. Right.
Instead of trying to make it balanced and things like that, just remove the disadvantages as much as we can.
Right.
And so with the food conversation, we were talking about how, we've been trying to, lead healthier lives. And we just realized how expensive it is to eat that type of food. So we were worried about our kiddos who want to eat healthy also.
Right.
Yeah, because as I said, I started buying all this healthy food and realized my grocery bill's gone through the roof. To where if you just buy like the processed foods and all the non-healthy foods, it's very low cost. And so that's where a lot of our low-income kids are getting is the foods, which doesn't keep them full.
Yeah.
So then that's one of their barriers when they come to school, taking a test or studying or whatever. They're hungry. They can't think if they're hungry. So, I know I do, supply food for kids that, need that extra help,
Yeah.
To get through the day.
Yeah.
Luckily, we have communities at schools
Right.
here,
Right.
and some other programs. I know we have free lunch for everyone that needs it, even for community members and
Yeah.
things like that. So those are the type of things that I just wish that that we can kind of push through without so much paperwork and things like that.
Yeah.
Just kind of make more connections throughout the community. So
And I'm glad you said that, because when it's time to take a test or do an assessment, we don't know what these kids are coming to school with
Exactly.
as far as the package of the economically disadvantaged nature of their home life. So when it's time to take a test like the STAR or the benchmark test or a CBA, whatever those high stakes tests are, we want them to be in the best position for success. And if they're not, we have to figure out what that is that's keeping them from being their best, and then find out how we can support those parents. Now, we're at Savannah Lakes Elementary School in Rocheron, Texas, not far from Houston proper, which is, we're in the state of Texas, and there's a lot of money here, right?
Yeah,
So
for sure.
there's a lot of athletics, there's a lot of programs going around. My question is, do we have a community of parents who are aware of the resources that they have available? We have, just to kind of give some background of the school, we have 57% are economically disadvantaged. So we have approximately 770 kids, which means about 430 of them are economically disadvantaged. free and reduced lunch. So we have a great population that fall under this category, and we have a diverse set of teachers. We have 58 teachers in the school that have majority African American or Hispanic students. Actually, 42% are African American and 40% are Hispanic. And I think we do have a great representation of that here on the staff. So are we, and from your experience, do you see that administrators or teachers are aware of those things or those resources that that parents need or have access to, that we can kind of share with them to do their part as parents to overcome some of the barriers that are in front of them or in between them and success?
I'm on a action committee for Alvin, and right now what we're talking about on the action committee, we're coming up with an action plan to promote equity throughout the district. How can we use our resources and have as much equity throughout the district as possible? So the two big barriers with that were a misconception of equity.
Okay.
So a lot of people not understanding what equity means. Like if you get this, we want this as well. And so I think what the district's trying to do is get in front of that and make sure that they're educating the community, parents, and the staff and students about what equity is. And then second, what they're trying to do is make sure that, to answer your question, I don't think that we've done the best job possible to make sure that everybody is aware of the resources that we do have. For instance, Alvin has a program where high schoolers will come and pick up students on rainy days who live in communities such as ours where there's no bus that runs.
Wow.
So a lot of our students who come from low income families, they don't have a way to get to school when it rains or when it's too cold to walk. So I didn't know, 6-7 years in the district, I had no idea that we had that. So number one, they're making sure that people have an understanding of equity. Number two, they're trying to make sure people understand the resources that we do have. And so we have these things, we need to make sure that people know about them. So I don't think we do a great job of it, but I think we can.
Yeah, we can do our part to kind of be the catalyst or the liaison between that effort and actually getting this, to getting these resources to the families.
And I was gonna say, Miss Gabby does a really good job.
Awesome.
Of, you know, getting those resources or finding resources for us when we don't have those.
Yeah, Miss Gabby,
resources to help us.
she's the community in schools leader, and she does a great job. I know I bring a lot of clothes in that she accepts as donations, or bikes or car seats and things of that nature for the students that live in these communities that may be at or below the poverty line. Not far from this area where we have a lot of nice houses and big backyards and green grass, just down the road past the fire station we have trailer homes, and you can really tell that there are some economically disadvantaged families in this community. As a matter of fact, as you can all remember, when we first got hired, our principal took us in a van, if you had this opportunity, and drove us in our community so that we can actually see the community of the families that we're serving, so we can be very aware, understanding, compassionate, and empathetic to what they're bringing to the table. So that leads me to high stakes testing. Okay, we're going to look at, and all of you, I've given you all the taper report. Everything that we've just talked about kind of blends into the conversation as to achievement for 5th grade mathematics. In 2021, it was reported for the approaches, meets, and masters levels, there was a success rate in math amongst 5th grade students, amongst the economically disadvantaged students, that there were 72% that made the approaches level. And then 1 year later, in 2022, there was a decline of 8%, and they reached 64% for approaches. So let's talk about that level, because we do have meets and masters, but let's talk about the approaches level. The success, is it an actual success for those? Because they didn't get into the did not meet section. How do we do our part to get those economically disadvantaged students from that approaches level to achieve more? How do we get them to do hard better, like Dr. Rigsby said? Like, what is that?
I know.
look like?
When I first started teaching, I was guilty of recognizing the disadvantages of my students and then not teaching to a higher rigor. So my expectations for certain students would be different because I would know that maybe they have certain things going on at home, or
Yeah.
they weren't able to do certain things
Right.
because of their situation. I now understand that we have to hold them at the same level of rigor. However, provide extra things that they need. I know some students may go home, they don't have any supplies to complete homework with. So when they're going home, I'm making sure that they have
Haley
pencils,
Highsall to the front office. Haley Highsall to the front office.
that they have paper, that they are bringing their notes home. I'm making sure I contact parents. Just a quick text to let them know, like, hey, this is what's due, just as a reminder.
Yes.
Because some of these parents are probably working multiple jobs to make ends meet. And so just making sure I provide the student, I just give them a little extra push and let them know I'm supporting them in this way,
Right.
but you are still expected to complete this work.
Right. That's great.
Yeah, and I think that's super important for, we talk about the non-academic barriers, and I think one of those, something that goes along with that is like chances. So like, I was able to make mistakes in my life coming from a middle-class family, that making those mistakes or making decisions, being lazy, all these types of things that I was able to navigate my way out of because of not necessarily resources that my family had, but even if that resource was time that they had, or so I was able to navigate myself out of these situations where, if we're these students who go home without homework, if they come back without the homework because they didn't have paper or pencil, and we're, they kind of come back and we just demoralize them.
Yeah.
And what
Right.
incentive do they have to go and try them? So I think recognizing those things, like you talked about, and then just looking for ways to remove those non-academic barriers and give these students more chances to be successful.
Well, it's like some of the kids that can't finish it at home, giving them those chances at school before school starts or whatever to come in and finish it, because they might not have a parent, at home to help them or to understand the homework that they have.
Yeah. So that could be that's another barrier.
That is absolutely.
Whether there's a language barrier, whether there's a support barrier, even a technological barrier. A lot of these families may not have a computer, laptop, internet access. They may have to go across the street. I even had a student who had to go to Starbucks to get on the internet, stay in the parking lot. And so I wasn't too hard on that student when it came time to turn in the work or complete Imagine Math or Imagine Learning, because they didn't have internet access at home. So just let them get on at school, make the time for them. So that's approaches. Now we're talking 4 levels. If we're 4 levels of success, you have the did not meets, which is the red. Then you have the yellow, which is approaches, which is not a fail, but it's not necessarily a grade level accomplishment. But some students have a false sense of success because I got yellow. Should parents and teachers celebrate that accomplishment of getting into yellow and not red, and then allow the students to have that success period so that they don't feel defeated, or should they continue to push for that grit and
because we do want to teach them to persevere, and I know we have a big thing here as far as growth mindset,
right,
and just always making progress. So any progress should be rewarded,
absolutely,
and that just kind of, and a lot of it as far as our underserved babies is just motivation. It's got to motivate. A lot of it is motivation.
Yeah,
a lot of it is motivation. So when we praise progress, then we'll see some
absolutely.
unbelievable
They'll want to do more.
Yeah, exactly. No
And so
matter
that-
how much it is.
Yes, and so that brings me to the next level, which is meets, which is that yellow. You get those students in there who are on the borderline of maybe that orange-ish getting out of the red into the yellow, and then some that are in the middle portion of that yellow. If we're talking about the Math STAR test for 2021, we had the 5th grade students, the economically disadvantaged students. They scored in the 29th percentile, and that's how many meet students. And then a year later, it was a decline of 3%, where they scored 26%. So talk about what could happen for there to be an 8% decline or a 3% decline when it comes to those levels. What are some best practices, for example, on the 3rd grade or on the 4th or 5th grade that we can adopt, that we can share with parents through an academic night or through parent conferences, or letting them know what we're doing, having an understanding of our programming, and get them involved, because parent involvement is very important. So let's talk about those students that are in the yellow who have the potential to get to that green or even the blue, with enough push.
I think being able to provide students with something that they could do at home successfully can just help grow the students. I mean, across the board, I know 3rd, 4th, and 5th word problems is always like a problem area. So just allowing students to be able to work on word problems at home in a fun way, like we have math night coming up, and just the kids being able to go home with something concrete that they can work on, and it's a fun game or a fun workstation that they can work on. They don't have to get on the computer. It's already prepared for them.
That's
And they
point.
can practice at home.
Yeah.
They can bring that back to school and just practice it with a friend at school. And maybe they don't understand something, and they can just make sure they understand that they have the support of their teacher to help them as well if they don't have an adult at home to help them.
I think that parent to teacher partnership is important too. You kind of spoke about it. I think if we can kind of make the parents, it has to be a partnership, it has to be 50-50, it has to be in the middle. But if we can make some of these parents feel comfortable with the learning environment, with the teacher, with just everything about school. We have to remember, some of our underserved community members, these parents have problems in school also. So some of them may not like school. And they can kind of project that onto their kids sometimes.
Right.
And I'm just speaking generally, but what we need to do is just make sure that they feel comfortable. I know we all reach out to our parents at the beginning of the school year. We have various means of communicating with them, with Blooms, Class Dojo, email, and things like that.
Right.
So if we can kind of just reinforce that positive relationship and keep it going throughout the school year, I think that can really help out. It just gives the kid a good vibe when parent and teachers are on the same page.
So I'm so glad you said that, because collaboration is key, whether it's administrative, whether it's parental, and the teachers collaborating to create this community of experience that the kids can lean on one side or the other is very important. And doing all those things, and especially the communication, I know here at Savannah Lakes we're constantly communicating with parents, whether it's good or not so good. We don't just call and say, hey, your child is in trouble. We give them positive things on the front end as well, because parents want to hear that their child is doing well. Most parents, in my opinion, over this 20-year period that I've been teaching, who may live in these low impoverished areas, they expect that a phone call from a parent is going to be negative every time. So for us to give them that feedback and give them that progress update, share with them what's going on a weekly basis, maybe not daily, but weekly and then monthly, I think that can make a difference as well.
I think communication is important for sure, but I also think building our relationship, like we always talk about building a relationship with our students, which is extremely important, but it's also important to build that relationship with the parents. The parents need to know that if they don't understand how to do an assignment with the kid, it's okay for them to let us know. Like, don't be embarrassed. Like, it's okay. Send them back with that incomplete assignment and let us help you, because we're here to support the family,
The community.
the community. Exactly. Like, we're here for everyone that is involved with this child learning.
Yes.
So I think building that relationship with the parent can also help, and it'll also allow the parent, because sometimes parents don't want this extra support that districts or campuses offer. Maybe it's embarrassment. They don't want us in their business, and so just building that relationship just really lets them know, hey, I'm here to support your child, and if this is to support your child, I'm here for it.
Absolutely.
So I think that also helps with helping students at home and being able to complete work at home, and just everyone feeling comfortable enough to come back to the teacher and saying, hey, we don't know how to do this. Can you explain to us how to do this?
And it's like, knowing some of the families that we have that are low economic disadvantage, some of those families are too proud to ask for help because they don't want to look like they're lesser than anybody else.
And especially with this being a campus of almost 50-50, it can come off embarrassing. Because you have another student in the same classroom who does not experience anything like this. There are some Title I campuses where everyone
Yeah,
is in the
oh,
same
that's true.
situation.
Yeah, for sure.
This is a campus where it's half and half.
Yeah.
Almost.
So
That's true.
that
That's a
could
good
be
point.
embarrassing. So building a relationship with that parent specifically and communicating with that parent can probably help increase our scores.
Right, especially with those who are very close to getting to that next level, that just need that little push, that communication, that sharing that we can do, and then the collaboration that can happen can make a world of difference.
So, I know we were talking about how we can improve the scores for approaches and meets. I also like what we do here as far as on campus during the school day support. A lot of times, and I know we do afternoon tutorials and morning tutorials, those are good things. A lot of times, some of our kids may not be able to make it to that. So I like the idea of having our intervention time throughout the day.
Right.
And making sure those kids have, all the kids have access to some type of support throughout the day. Because a lot of our underserved kiddos don't have transportation, they can't make it to afternoon tutorials or morning tutorials or things like that. Parents darn sure can't afford a private tutor or anything like that. I can barely afford that. So yeah, I think that's super important to make sure that we have during school hour intervention and support also.
Yes, that's a good point. Having these periods or sessions of the day interwoven into our curriculum already, or into our sessions,
Master schedule.
yeah, into our master schedule, so that we don't have to, I won't say inconvenience parents after school, but it's not an inconvenience if it's, something that's gonna help your child, but we do take some of that pressure off by having some of those things. Like today, we have our tutorials, and tomorrow's another day of tutorials, reading and math, so they do have to make some sacrifice though, as parents. We do have to do our part as parents to, if they can, and if not, we can find out some resources to support them. Now, when we move from meets to masters, the numbers get smaller and smaller, and we do have our GT math teacher here who can speak to how these numbers can actually increase or why they're declining. We had 10% that mastered in 2021, and then in 22, that number dropped to 7%, and so there was a decline of 3%. So kind of talk to why or how those numbers it shows that economically disadvantaged students can reach masters.
Yeah.
So what barriers have you experienced that may be in the way of some of those that did not reach the master's level amongst that subpopulation?
Well, I think especially recently, the reason we see that decline is because of a lot of the virtual learning that we had and the gaps created by COVID and the time that was spent out from that. Something unique about fifth grade is that probably 90% of the students who make masters on the fourth grade STAR test are moved to sixth grade math. So that shrinks your opportunity for fifth grade students to achieve masters. So we have to really work to close some of those gaps that have been created by COVID. So these masters numbers that we see for fifth grade are new masters.
Okay.
It's not any who got masters on fourth grade that get it again in fifth grade. Usually those students will be in sixth. But to close those gaps, a lot of what we have to do is just be intentional, like you talked about the intervention time, how important that is, and how it's a kind of a non-negotiable on our campus. And the last thing that's ditched in a day is that intervention time. And I think just being purposeful and intentional during that intervention time has really helped to close some of those gaps, and we have to be that way. Because I was talking to a teacher today on our campus who had a student in first grade when COVID started. Their daughter, or the first year we had virtual learning, their daughter is now in third grade, and had to go to summer school as a first grader for, I guess we're so far behind, and this year tested at the highest, had the highest score in their all of third grade.
Nice.
Wow.
And
Wow.
what they were able to do to close that gap was hiring private tutors.
Okay.
And so, a lot of our students don't have that
Right.
opportunity. So what are we going to do, right? And so we can see that it needs something like that. It needs kind of that outside intervention.
Yeah.
If you're going to accelerate that and get them from first to third grade to not only they close those gaps, but they've grown to be the highest score in the school.
Right.
So in order for that to happen, outside intervention needs to take place, but our students don't have that opportunity. So what can we do?
What can
And I
we
think
do?
so.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we look at. You know, what can we do? Where can we start to close these gaps?
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's our intention in 5th grade. So
Yeah.
a lot of data and a lot of
That's a good way. I mean, you cleared it up. Like some of those students may not have participated in the 5th grade math. They went from 4th to 6th, and that causes the numbers to shrink.
Right, right.
And that's not something that we really know offhand. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because we'll look at the numbers like they're just raw numbers. Like,
Right,
wow,
right.
there's 10% masters. Why? You know.
Yeah.
And then administrators, they may mention that, you know, in data talk meetings during PLCs or whatever the case is. But just looking at the raw numbers, it's like, wow, there was a 10%.
right. Yeah.
You know, and then
Yeah.
a 7. What happened? But I'm glad you cleared that
But we're
up.
still responsible to get this to
Yeah.
a certain number. So
Exactly.
we still, you know, we can't just
Yeah.
say, well, they moved out. We still
Yeah.
have to.
I think it's important to be intentional also. I mean, these kids that are from this low socioeconomic environment, they have other things going on. So from year to year, we have to make sure that we are, if we have an RTI process on these kids or whatever documentation we're keeping on them, we need to make sure it's in the system and it is going with them to the teacher the next year, so that it's not taking a full semester or a
Right.
few 9 weeks to figure out this student is economically disadvantaged and struggling in this area. We have to be intentional with everything we do.
Absolutely.
If this is a student that is of low socioeconomic background and they struggle in this content or this we know, let's start off the year and not waste any time, because the student doesn't have any time to waste. We need to close these gaps
Right.
for this child. We need to provide, take the barriers out of the way and provide what this child needs so that they can be successful. Because
Absolutely.
they have a lot of other things going on. And so we can help them in school by being more intentional to ensure that they're more successful.
Right, and I think just analyzing data and creating groups that are purposeful, intentional when it comes to math and reading, science and social studies as well. But more importantly, I think when it comes to, at least for 4th grade, I know we don't even have a science STAR test, so we're focused on proficiency in reading and math. And so when we create our groups, we have to really look at those numbers. I mean, I hate to say it's all about numbers and testing, but at the end of the day, how do you know what a child is doing if you don't look at those numbers, or how they're progressing and what their performance and their improvement can be? We want to give the students the capacity to learn as much as they can. Now, one of the catalysts to some of the students' proficiency is attendance. So when I analyzed, we looked at the attendance rates over the last 2 years. We started out in 2020 to 21, there was a 96, in 2019 and 2020, there was a 99% attendance rate. In 1 year, it dropped down to 96. So we have a 3% decline in attendance. Now, earlier, Mr. Hilburn, you spoke to the fact that there may be a transportation issue where, you know, kids just can't get to school because there's not a transportation method. Parents may not have transportation personally. There's no bus that goes to their community. So that is a big thing. So let's kind of talk about attendance and maybe some incentives that or what can we do to increase. And I know this year the attendance rates are going to come out for 21-22. And I'm kind of curious to see where we are now in relation to 96% for 21. So what can we do as far as attendance? Like, do you know of any resources that outside of what Mr. Hilburn spoke of earlier, that we can kind of put in place and things we can do to get kids into the classroom?
Well, I'm a huge data person.
Yeah.
So I would say that the numbers from those years were COVID years.
Right.
So a student logging in, they were marked here. So the comparison to last year and this year's will be more accurate.
Okay.
To what can we do now to improve attendance? I think motivating students to be here by giving incentives is what's going to help them. Like what are some good incentives? If you are here, like the popsicle party, let's do a popsicle party. Let's do
The attendance.
exactly.
Well,
Attendance.
Yeah.
I've noticed a big increase since we started the Sun Club on Wednesdays.
Right.
Mhm.
There's hardly any kids absent on
Mhm.
Wednesdays anymore. because they look forward to that sun climb at the
Yeah.
end of the day.
Yeah.
Right.
Which,
That is true.
let's talk on that. A lot of these kids are not allowed, not allowed, but they're not given the opportunity to get any extracurricular activities.
Right,
Because
right.
their parents don't have.
And that's, I love that idea of it being during the school day. So
Right,
parents don't have
right.
to pay for it, they don't have to get them there or anything like that. So I think it's a big bonus for our kiddos to get some, and that will get to that group that's at meets right now.
Mhm.
That affects that meets to masters group right there because they need some extracurricular
Right.
and some enrichment, some
Yeah,
enrichment
yeah.
programs that might help them get a little bit more interested. I know some of our higher achievers who may be underserved, they're not motivated and they're uninterested in a lot of the schoolwork, so they need some extra stuff to kind of keep them going.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's important. I know when I first started teaching, I was trying to get my personal children into extracurricular activities, and I couldn't get them to practice on time, or it's
it
tough.
really is,
So
it really is, yeah.
to have something at school during the day,
Mhm.
I said, okay, I can just send my son downstairs to the gym, and he can go practice with the team while I'm doing things in my classroom. So I can truly understand that. So as teachers, if we can put ourselves in the parents' shoes and
Absolutely.
understand what they're going through and be proactive with them, I think that can also catapult success as well.
I think too, it's, we talked about this when we talked about promoting equity throughout the district, because number one, for students to close these gaps, they need to be at school. Number two, for the district to share the resources amongst the district, we need students at school. And so they, all the students, elementary, they did it by elementary, middle, high school. I looked primarily at the elementary data. And so they had all the students who had, or all the parents who had truancy filed against them, who had an elementary school student, and they had them complete a survey. And one of the biggest things that stuck out to me was almost all these parents said that they didn't think that missing a day here and there was that big of a deal. And so that made me kind of reflect on, like, well, what am I doing at school that the kids are going home and saying that the parents think that this wasn't that big of a deal to miss? So I need to be more, back to intent, need to be more intentional about making sure that these days are purposeful,
Yes.
and that there's no
That's true.
confusion on whether this was an important day or not. And so, and that goes, it kind of all ties in the relationships as well. If we have relationships with these parents
Yeah.
and are making them feel comfortable, then
we can stress the importance
Yeah.
of
right.
being here on time also,
Yeah.
not just,
Right, right.
because a lot of our babies, and I know they're affected by weather a lot more than our non-economically disadvantaged students are. So, some things, when it's flooding or when it's super cold outside, pipes may burst. We don't know. They may have unstable living
Yeah.
conditions that not everybody would understand.
Right,
So we have
right.
to kind of understand that also. I also was thinking about virtual learning too, just like a hybrid model. Even though for some of the students who may not be able to make it but do have access to internet, that might help out with attendance also.
Yeah.
If
Um,
they do.
At least enforcement, right?
Yeah.
So in a perfect world, and we've all put our minds in euphoria, perfect world scenarios, like when we're taking our state exams to be teachers, put yourself in that perfect mindset, right? But what if, let's talk about the other side for a couple of minutes. What if the students don't come to tutorials? What if we extend the services to the parents and they don't accept them, or they have too much pride and they don't want to accept the pair of shoes that we see that their child may need? I remember the other day, I gave a child some lotion. I noticed that he needed it. I took it upon myself to give it to him. He said he wanted to have it, take it home, and he kept using it every day. And he showed me, Mr. Isaacson, look, I got lotion on my, all right. Gave him a high five. He was excited to get the lotion. Little small things like that. So what if the parents are in opposition to the efforts? What do we do then? Or think about some suggestions, I guess, that we can possibly come up with. Maybe one or two things that we can say to our administrators or to our fellow teachers. How can we get over the hump of a barrier that the parents may even put in front of their own children?
That's just education.
You know?
Yeah, we have to be able to educate them somehow,
Yeah.
and not from a point of view where we're being, what's the word? Just like high and mighty about it. But we do need to kind of be able to educate them somehow, either if it's via social media or if it's actually on campus. But like Mr. Hilburn was saying, we have to kind of stress the importance of education and make sure that they understand it also. Now, like I said, how, I mean, that's, I would put it,
discussed.
so, yeah, social media, I think is a good idea,
Yeah.
from the district, but, some other ways, would help also.
I actually had a student this year, he's no longer on the campus, but I had a student this year that fit that description. And so at school, I would do my best to make sure the student understood how important it was for them to be here and learn the things that they needed to learn. But I also went to our resources, and I went to Ms. Flores, and I was like, I don't know what to do. This student is not here. I know this student is on your list. Is there anything that we could do together, or
Right.
you could do? And so she went and spoke with the mom at home. Personally, they spoke, and from that point on, the mom understood that the school was supporting her.
Yeah.
That the school was supporting her, that it didn't stop like, oh, well, this child is not here, not learning, but that the school, she said she did not know that we cared that much. And
Wow.
so then from that point on, the student was here. If the student was not going to be here, the mom would text me and say, hey, we can't make it. And I would tell her it's okay. I would send the student with extra work that they could work on at home when the student came here.
Yeah.
And that really helped.
So the
Wow.
teachers on the front line, I really dig what you're saying. We're really on the front line as far as building that positive relationship and just creating a positive atmosphere and a perspective for the parents for the school.
Right.
So if we can kind of build that throughout, just initiating positive conversations and things like that, then they may be more just more prone to accepting the help. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, and there, I think for a parent to know how they can advocate for their child is very important. Knowing what questions to ask,
Yeah.
and if their child needs services, if they need to be, I don't know, any assessments that need to be done, or ARDs that they don't know about. I've had a couple since I've been here that parents just didn't know what an ARD was and how to even ask for one to get their child in, into the process. And so that was a barrier because the child just kept getting moved on. And I finally said, wait a minute, this child had something. I didn't get that much out of this child until the end of the school year, but I knew that there was something that could be developed. And I'm not one to give up on a child, and none of us are here. And an economically disadvantaged student at times can feel like they're being pushed or marginalized because of the successes of other students in the classroom. So how can we make sure that these students of this population feel like they have a voice, or they feel like they are successful, or they have the potential to be great? Like, is there anything that you can do personally with some of your talents or some of your personal characteristics that can help a student in their classroom? Because I know if we walk into Mr. Hilburn's classroom, he's a super Astros fan.
Yeah.
Maybe there's another student who loves baseball that he can, connect with, those types of things. I think that can go a long way as well.
Yeah.
What I was gonna say, having that growth mindset and teaching the kids what a growth mindset is.
Yeah.
And having them
Growth
to,
mindset.
following with that as well. And then encouraging others.
Yeah. I think going along with the growth mindset is saying you keep doing what you're doing, you keep getting what you got. Well, I think sometimes we kind of use, at least I have used it as a crutch, where when I'm successful, so I'm just gonna keep doing this because it worked. Let me just keep doing this,
Right.
keep doing what I'm doing, and keep getting what I got. And that's not the case with students. And so we have to continually adapt the way that we do things and look for ways to make it work. So I think that it's a good question, and it's for lack of a better phrase, it's kind of that's what we have to do.
That's
I don't know how else to say
Yeah,
it.
we have to be flexible. Like, building relationship, yes, but we have to be flexible in just like we differentiate our lesson plans, we have to approach each student differently.
Oh my goodness, you're right.
So I think that's where we can start.
Yeah, I mean, how do we? There have been times when a student may come into. I know we've all experienced it. Come into the classroom and they look like they're sad, or they've been crying because something happened in the car or at home, or maybe they haven't eaten the night before, or whatever the case is. And then we're expected to teach them these content objectives, these language objectives, get into groups, and how can they start their day when there's something like a pre-existing emotional barrier or economic barrier that they're coming into class with that we haven't addressed as teachers? That's one thing I've always been a catalyst or a proponent for, is for teachers to identify what their students' characteristics are, what their profile is, and how we can actually reach them. You can't eat a cake that hasn't been baked. If you have all the ingredients on the table, you're not going to eat a cake. You're going to eat a bunch of individual ingredients, which is not a cake. And these students come in with a bunch of fragmented emotions and abilities that we have to put together, and throughout the school year they bake, right? So at the end of the year, there's this finished product that we hope to move to the next level. And if that's not a complete holistic, like you mentioned, holistic at the beginning, how can we honestly feel good about them going to the next level? So these are some of the things I think about when the school year starts, in the middle, and for my reading teachers, the beginning, middle, and end.
Right.
And you know, do you really feel good about what you've done throughout the school year to move this child to the 4th grade, move them to the 5th grade, to move them to that middle school where they're now going to be expected to endure 6 or 7 classes as opposed to just their core class and specials and lunch and recess, you know. So as we wrap up, let's just kind of bring it all together and summarize some of the things that we've talked about, from the test scores to economically disadvantaged students being supported. What are some final thoughts that each of us may have that we can kind of put on the table that can maybe provoke thought and move us forward to the next level of this conversation?
I think I would say remove the barrier
Yes.
for the student and build a relationship with the student and parent.
Remove the barrier, build a relationship.
I think the programs that we're going to develop in the initiatives have to be relationship centered, from the school to all the stakeholders. So it has to kind of propel us towards positive relationships with
Absolutely.
parents, community members, and everyone. So
Absolutely.
the programs and initiatives need to be relationship centered.
We talked. We read an article on PLC a couple weeks ago talking about the uncommonness of high achieving schools in high poverty areas, and so to kind of, I think that should be our, especially at Title I schools, that should be our, our purpose is to alleviate that, to do away with that, and so, it's kind of what we talked about a lot today was with the parents, and something that I just started trying to do over the past couple years is be mindful of the way that I talk to them, not in like a rude or a not rude way, but I think it's lost on us a lot how intimidating it can be. Mr. Stewart talked about, a lot of these families or parents may have had bad experiences in the school, and even if they didn't have a bad experience in the school, it can be intimidating to come to a school building.
For sure.
And that's lost on me because this is the least intimidating place that I come. And so, just how can we talk to them? How can we act to make this a less intimidating place, to make us less intimidating
Right.
people, RTI, PLC, all these acronyms. Just talking to them in a way that makes them feel comfortable,
That's
I think
definitely-
goes a long way.
Definitely.
Explaining things to them.
Right.
Yes, and that's the importance of having the academic nights, to meet the teachers and all this, so that we can get on the same accord, so that we can move forward. And with that being said, I would really want to express appreciation to you all for attending this conversation and having this discussion about economically disadvantaged students. And I would like to end it there. I am Dion Eisen once again. We have Alicia Sanchez, math teacher from 3rd grade. We have Mr. Robert Stewart, who is our reading and language arts teacher for 4th grade. Ms. Kim Korpowicz from the 3rd grade. Mr. Hill, 3rd minus 2 equals 1. I'm apologetic. And 1st grade, I'm sorry. I'm thinking Ms. Sanchez again. And Mr. Hilburn here from the 5th grade. And we really want to say thank you.